I'm Megan Mitchell. This is my co-host, John Morrison, and you are listening to the True North Racing Podcast.
Time to strap in, pull those belts, and get ready for an action-packed episode of the True North Racing Podcast. Are you ready to unmask? Unhelmet your favorite racers? Get ready for the most fun you'll have outside the racetrack to get you ready for the next race. You're listening to John Morrison and Megan Mitchell, and this is the True North Racing Podcast.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the True North Racing Podcast. I'm your host, John Morrison. I'm flying solo tonight. Megan is away on vacation, so you guys got me for the next little bit here tonight. I am so excited. We got a great conversation with you guys, that you guys are going to check it out. We have the lovely ladies from Friday Night Thunder joining us tonight, and we're so excited to learn more about Friday Night Thunder, how it got started, how it got involved. I'm so excited, and we're not going to talk about too much going on because again, it's harder to do when it's just by myself now, but I'm so excited to have this group on because I reached out to them a couple weeks ago. They were more than willing to join us for the show, and I'm excited to talk about Friday Night Thunder, what it's like working with the drivers at Ohsweken Speedway, what it was like for that lull from 2020 through 2021 when they couldn't really film anything new after season 1 in 2019 was filmed. So we're gonna learn about their stories about how they got involved in motorsports. It's gonna be exciting. I'm not gonna talk too much, but we're gonna get rolling here. We're gonna have a quick video for you guys to watch. I'm sorry if you guys are listening on to Spotify or anything like that, but if you guys check out us on YouTube, we do have a video from Friday Night Thunder. Let's check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, you came looking for a show. Well, here you go.
Ohsweken just races like a big, fast track.
If you're not aggressive and you're not willing to make it dicey, you're not passing nobody and you're not going to be fast.
Oh, Victor Bomberry found his limits.
That's unbelievable.
Joining us this week on the True North Racing Podcast, I feel like I'm in the presence of someone a lot bigger than ever I could ever have imagined on the show. We got Laura Milliken joining us. Laura, how are you?
I don't know if I can live up to that. Thank you. I'm great now that you introduced me that way. Thank you.
No, honestly though, so you are the director, correct, for Friday Night Thunder?
Yeah, I created it. My company produces it. I direct it, write it. But I have a team that obviously is part of the whole thing as well, who write with me and direct with me, and you'll meet them later. But those are my three main things: are directing, writing, and producing.
See, that's what I'm getting at here is like, I've never thought I could ever, like, when I reached out to you about coming onto the show, I never thought this was going to be possible. I'm going to be honest. I figured like, you're like, nope, no, not going to happen. You'd find another show to go with. And that I'm like, that's fine. But you're probably one of the biggest people we've had on the show. Like our biggest person we've ever had has been J.R. Fitzpatrick and Adam Ross. So like you're living up to some really good expectations here because for one, you have a show that's nationwide, correct, on APTN.
It is nationwide, yes.
Yeah. So let's dive right into, actually, before we even get into Friday Night Thunder, let's learn a little bit more about Laura. How did you get involved in motorsports and how did Friday Night Thunder come about?
Okay, well, gosh, it's such a long story. I'll try and give you the Cole's notes, boiled down version.
Oh, tell us the whole story. We're good.
Well, I created my production company many years ago. We operated out of Toronto for the whole, life of Big Soul Productions. I created the company with Jennifer Podemsky, who's also a very, very respected and well-known director, writer, actor, and producer. All of those things she does very well. I have a lot of respect for her. learned a lot from her, and had a lot of mentors along the way. I knew nothing when I started the company. Really had to learn as I went along. We created the first Indigenous dramatic series ever that was written by, starring Indigenous people, produced by Indigenous people, and that was Moccasin Flats. So we made that in what was then called Canada's worst neighborhood, which was North Central Regina. And we were like, whatever, let's go in there and make a show. And that's what we did. And it's just still very near and dear to my heart. We were on Showcase Television as well for 3 seasons. Yeah, so we did that, and I also did some animation and a bunch of stuff. But what I want to say about Friday Night Thunder is that it actually came along at a very pivotal time in my life. I was at a turning point where I felt like I may not stay in this industry, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, I don't even know if I'm necessarily going to live to see next year if I keep going the way I'm going. I was burnt out. I was very sick. It was a really, I grew up in tough circumstances, you know, like my father he went to the mush hole. He's from Kettle and Stony Point. He went to the mush hole. So, you know, there was a lot of generational trauma that we experienced as a family. And, you know, it's really hard when all of the ability to parent right and to bond with your kids has been taken away from you in a place like that. And so he tried, but he was, you know, very, very sick himself. And that's how I grew up. So I, you know, was into the drinking from childhood, and running a company and being this, you know, functioning alcoholic drug addict was something that I was hiding from everybody for a very long time. And then I was in the midst of a separation, a divorce, and felt like I was on the verge of losing my company, but more so I was losing myself. And I was very burnt out. You know, the industry is not easy, and it's not easy on Indigenous people, and it's not easy on Indigenous women. And so trying to establish a voice in an industry where you're constantly told, you know, you're trying to do something that's impossible. It's hard to market a show that's, you know, about Indigenous people to, you know, mainstream audiences. Now, I don't really know what mainstream audiences meant, but that's what I was being told. And it was very disheartening. And I really, really had to fight my entire career in a way that I think that a lot of producers wouldn't have to fight normally to have a voice. And I felt that was very unfortunate. I still do. I still think we get, you know, even the APTN really, I love them. We have an amazing relationship. They love this show. But they don't have the biggest budgets. They don't have the biggest purse strings, you know? So yeah. We do a lot with very, very little money here. And that is the legacy that I experienced my entire life in this industry. So here I was at this turning point where I thought, you know, like I might die. And now I don't have a husband. And now I feel like I don't even want this business because it's so cruel to me. And I don't know what to do. So, you know, 6 months into my sobriety from alcohol, which was in 2018, I started developing Friday Night Thunder. And I got to be truthful, Clinton and Glenn had actually called me years before and said, would you like to make a show about Ohsweken Speedway? And I said, well, it sounds really fascinating, but I don't know if the network will go for it. Let me see. And they just at the time weren't interested. So this time around, because of where I was at in my sobriety at the time, I was talking to Glenn Stiers about a completely different show. So I wrote up the show. It was called The Give Back. And I wrote up the show and I sent it to APTN and I said, hey, what about this? And it was a very well-meaning show. And, you know, it had an amazing intention behind it to give back to the communities that, you know, give to us and, or need it. And they came back and said, well, it's very well-meaning. It's nice and everything, but what about this racetrack? And I said, okay, so now you're interested in a series about this racetrack. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So here I'd come through this like very, very painful time. And what a lot of people don't know about being a lifelong alcoholic addict is that you aren't just healing your body, you're healing your brain.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things is after, you know, a life of abuse. You don't know that you're still sick, you're sober, but you think, you know, you don't really think, you think you've kind of left all that behind, but you haven't. So I have gotten sober with this show. It's taken 5 years with this show, me doing this show, me healing with this show, me connecting with people in the motorsports world, connecting with the cast, connecting to the stories that people were sharing with me, where I was starting to find my healing. So in that way, I really connect this journey with Friday Night Thunder with my well-being and with where all of that started in 2018. And so for those reasons, it's probably the most meaningful project we've done, and we've done lots, but this is the most meaningful. I have a connection with this community that I wasn't expecting. I was at the track actually on Wednesday after the Pinty's race, and I was crying to my friends because I was thinking about my interview on Race Rivals with Clinton Jeffrey, and he very innocently asked, he didn't mean anything by it, but he said, what's it like for an outsider to be coming into this world and telling these stories? And when I thought about it last week, I started to cry because I thought it is literally the one place in my entire life, after all of the identity issues and the alcohol issues and all of the other, you know, anxiety issues and all of these problems that I had, this is the only place where I didn't feel like an outsider. And that is life altering. That's transformational stuff, you know, when you can actually finally be somewhere after living your entire life feeling like an outsider in every place you've gone, and suddenly be in a place like this, and over the years realize, no, I'm not an outsider and I don't even feel like it. And that was, I think, a moment that I really started to understand what all of this has really meant to me. And it's been more than just making a TV series. Every single person that's in the show, that works on the show, that we like, this is the only show I've ever had where we shoot once a week, and we've had some of the same crew all 4 seasons.
That's awesome.
And yeah, because people care about it, and we have amazing people on the show, and it's an incredible place to be. So we're very, very blessed. And I'm blessed that motorsports came into my life when they did. And I should give credit to my co-creator, Derek Miller, who introduced me to all forms of racing, and, you know, introduced me to some of the big racers and said, let's watch these films and let's watch these documentaries and let's go to these races because you need to learn about this. And that education was so important. Then of course, Glenn Stiers, you know, and Clinton and Tina and everybody at the racetrack who embrace us and make us so welcome that we actually feel like family there. So, you know, being somebody who didn't grow up with a lot of family, this is how I think maybe why I connect, is that there's a lot of people there that are in the same boat, that feel a belonging there, that don't feel like an outsider, that have maybe gone through the fire in a lot of the ways that I did. And maybe we have this unspoken kind of language where we kind of, and the more I get to know people, the more I'm like, we're actually very similar. This is crazy. So yeah, that's the short version, but the long version would have actually taken all day, but that's the nuts and bolts.
Okay, you just took me through an absolute roller coaster of emotion here, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm here for it. I love it. But I got to touch on the latest thing here. Is you're absolutely correct. The motorsports community we don't care if you're an outsider, because as soon as you come in and you show you're not just going to be in and out, they really embrace you. They really think, like, they take care of you like your own. I always say every race weekend is a family reunion, because we're off doing our own thing all week. There's obviously a lot of people who hang out all week and work together, whatnot. But every Saturday, Friday night, it is a family reunion. And, you know, I say that's the same thing beginning every season. We got 6 months. We have a long off season. First race of the night, no one's really caring. Everyone's walking up and down pit road, talking to whoever, because they haven't seen them for 6 months. They catch up on life. It is just that's the biggest thing I love about racing, is how much we care about each other without how do I put that now? We really care about each other to the point where we make sure that everyone's okay. And to hear that is absolutely, like, to me, I love hearing that because I walked into the sport 15 plus years ago, didn't know a single person. My stepfather at the time was the crew chief for the guy I started working with. And I've done a bunch of things. I've been a crew chief. I've been a spotter. I've been social media managers. Now I'm a part of a track. I'm social media manager for a track, a series, and as well as my own Joe Media stuff. And everyone's embraced me so much differently. And that's what motorsports is all about. And I love hearing that. But it's great to hear, obviously, how you went in with one idea for a show and you come out, it's like, well, what about Ohsweken? I'm sitting here, I'm like, you know what? Ohsweken was picking up a lot of steam in 2017, 2018. I was catching myself watching dirt every Friday night because they were broadcasting on YouTube. It was so much easier to watch. I finally got to my first dirt race in 2019. So
Wow.
like, I was in the sport.
We started.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I went the Brock Memorial night for the 50 lap Thunderstocks. I took my kids out and it was a last minute decision. I had the extra cash and I was like, you know what, let's go. I texted my stepdad and said, hey, make sure my kids are dressed because they were with me for the week. And I was like, we're going to Ohsweken. I'm like, well, that's going to be late. I'm like, you know what? They can nap on the way down. There's food there. I want to check this track out. It looks so much fun on TV. I need to see how it is in real life. And they hooked me right away.
You know what? My dad used to always take me to the horse races. When we had Greenwood Racetrack in Toronto, we lived right there, so he would take me. And like, of course, I was a cute little kid, and I would pick all the numbers But I think that's where my gambling issues may have started. But what I loved about the horse races was there was just something about the thundering of it and the excitement of picking your horse and really cheering that horse on. And I feel like the sprint cars are very similar to that. A lot of times I go to it picking my horse, and it's really fun that way. And it still has that sort of thundering thing, and they're still going around like an oval or something, and it feels like, so I feel like it was kind of the closest racing to a horse race that's a motorsport. And maybe that's why it appeals to me so much. I don't know, but now I'm a crazy woman in the stands. Now that I know what's going on, I'm crazy. I get so wound up watching those races now.
Honestly, I understand that. So my fiance has never ever been to a stock car race. We've been together for 3+ years now, and she finally got to her first race in 2021. I took her. No, in 2020. I took her in 2020 to one of our shutdown events at Ohsweken Speedway. And she's standing there like, what is going on? And but her excitement started building. She got to know some of the drivers. Hell, in our wedding party, she has one of the drivers who's actually is our co-host, Megan Mitchell. She has her in her wedding party. She's made some great friends along with the club that I'm part of with this, the Canadian Vintage Modifieds. Racing really just like she gets up to the fence and she gets excited, and it's great to see, right? But going on from that, I want to get into more about behind the scenes of the creation of Friday Night Thunder, because again, I'm excited. You guys are hyping me up so much for this show that I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched a whole lot of it because I was never primitive to to knowing about the show. I've kind of seen clips in here and there, and I've been following you Friday Night Thunder on Instagram and Facebook for a couple years now, I think. And then now I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, September 8th, I'm sitting my butt down at 8:30, and I don't care if I'm watching Ohsweken, I'm switching over to that and I'm giving it a shot because I need to see how this is like. Because you guys are hyping me up with these promo videos. I've watched them all numerous times now because I want to get acclimated to them. And I'm sitting over here like a little kid just waiting for Christmas. And so we need to get to the bottom of this. Sorry.
I hope you enjoy it. is a different kind of show. It's a more personal look, I think, at the drivers. It's not so focused on the mechanics of the car. For over the last 3 years, well, that's season 3 that airs September 8th at 8:30. There's 13 episodes. There have been 13 episodes in every season. And it kind of got derailed a little bit because of COVID.
Yep.
So we were establishing, you know, our characters and our world as Ohsweken Speedway. And like any good, you know, docu-series is following a world where you can get accustomed to it and get to know all the characters in there. So, you know, we were hoping by a few seasons in, you'd know everybody. You'd know who the race director was, and you'd know who all the people that worked there were. And season 2, we had to go traveling all around. So we went to different tracks, and they were so kind to open their doors to us. They didn't know who we were. Our first season hadn't even aired yet. So for Merrittville and Brighton and Brockville and Humberstone and Little Middleton to all, and South Buxton, which is now called something else, I think.
Southern Ontario Motor Speedway.
Southern Ontario Motor Speedway, yes. So they were also kind to welcome us in. They didn't know who we were. We went there, we shot. It was got some really great material at every track. But it was different. It was a different way of exposing the characters and the place and all of that, because now what we have are people who are really rooted in the place of Ohsweken Speedway now that we're back into season 3. So season 3 was really about coming back to this place that had been closed for 2 years. So where do we start? What's happened? You know, without dwelling too much on the whole COVID thing and the 2-year shutdown, we had to start somewhere. So we really start by revisiting Glenn's story and where he's at with his health and where he's at with his family and that sort of thing. So, and the origins of Ohsweken Speedway, because those are also very, very interesting as well. Glenn had a dream since he was a child, like that paper drawing that he has. We've shown it a couple of times on the show. And I think we show it again in episode 1 of season 3, I think. But it's a really interesting story how he had this childhood dream and people got behind him. You know, his family got behind him, his mom got behind him, his brother got behind him. His wife Tina, he raised his family was being raised in this area while they were building a house, while they were building a track. Like it's really wild, that story. I kind of never get sick of hearing it. Because now look at what it is. It's one of the greatest places around. So that's where we go back to in the beginning of season 3. I think it was necessary after having to leave for a year. So we had to kind of get reacquainted with the place, and we are getting reacquainted with the people. So, sliding back in, trying to get, understand who these drivers are, and they're all from different backgrounds. Some of them have teams, some of them are independent, some of them have money, some of them don't. Some of them are really, really, fanatics about racing, and some of them are there because it's fun and they love being there. And that's what I love about the show, is that it's like, that's what's at the track, is people are all there for different reasons. And it's not, it is a serious show, but it's also not that serious. We're also there to just have fun.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of that. So there is a lot of racing. The race fans will understand what's going on in the race sequences. I have talked to a couple of people who've said, I don't really understand the racing segment. And I understand that. So we're trying to make it a little easier to follow in season 4. The thing is, when you get used to telling stories like this, like in my mind, I see the race and I know what it means. It's hard to translate it to everybody. So we're also trying to find this delicate balance where we're sharing the terminology of a racetrack, which isn't easy for the layperson to understand.
Yep.
Especially if they're just tuning in for one episode, and trying to keep it in terms that are entertaining. You're peeling back, layers of a character, and you're getting to know people better and understanding the sport better, but also investing, in the stories, in the characters. And that's really what we're looking for the most, is these really cool people. And in season 4, which we're working on now, you actually get to know them better. So, we're peeling back the layers year after year, and it is hard to get people, really invested into being vulnerable on camera as well. It's got to be terrifying for these guys sometimes. You know, they're putting themselves out there enough, just getting in the car in front of the cameras, just having the onboards in their cars, you know, like they're really putting themselves out there. And then we're like, hey, can you also be vulnerable and tell us something about yourself? Like, let us invade your space. And, you know, I got to give these guys credit for learning how to work with us and trust us, because that's why I did that reel about season 1 on Instagram. And I talked about how we had to learn, and we did. People were like angry at us. Get out of my pit. What are you doing? Are you guys even looking where you're going? Like, it's funny because I look at photos of myself and I'm like, look what I'm wearing in the pits. Like it was crazy. I had no idea what I was doing. I have to admit. And so the show is kind of like also learning as we're learning as well. So in my opinion, if somebody who didn't know anything about racing started from the beginning, they would learn enough to follow it. And you can see the repeat episodes of season 1 and season 2, 26 episodes on APT and Lumi, which you can find through Apple TV.
Perfect. I know what I'm going to be doing shortly after this. So, well, maybe tomorrow night while I'm editing this, so that way it's up for Tuesday morning. Because right after this, I got to be up for work at 5 a.m. So this is going to be a little weird for me tonight.
Well, I probably send you galleries too, so you don't have to worry about. Just don't tell APTN I did that.
Well, then I'll have to cut that whole section out. No, honest, that's awesome though. Like it's you're right though. It is crazy because, you know, having to follow the racing stuff, and as well as you want them to be vulnerable, and create that conversation to, or have these moments that you need to break down. And it's not the easiest to get from some people. And obviously hosting a podcast, you get that feeling as well, because either people have requested to come on, or it's a buddy of mine that would like to come on. I'm like, all right. Sometimes it's hard to bring those stories out when they're almost not willing to. Like we like having those conversations, because the whole point of this show is to unmask or unhelmet the drivers, because besides a meet the drivers night or a fan appreciation night where people go through the pits, no one really knows these drivers. They don't know what they do in their spare time or what they like to do. And that's why that's why I like doing this, because I get to learn about people. I know a few people, you know, at all the different tracks, and I'm starting to get noticed more, which is always funny when people like, hey, I like your episode. I'm like, which one? But, you know, it's to create those conversations, to create the scenarios you would like to portray are also what makes it a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Hill Bros.
Yeah.
The Hill Bros on our, you know, anyone getting to know these guys, and this is what I'm hoping comes through on the show, is the two of the biggest hearts you're ever going to see. You know, they're always giving, and they would give you anything to help you out, and their whole would, and most of the guys in the pits would, to be truthful. But there's, you know, the Hill Bros really represent to me community, and you know, they're still learning how to trust us. They're still learning how to be vulnerable. But we've had a lot of vulnerable people on the show. Like Glenn has been very open and vulnerable with us in some of our episodes, and we've had very tearful conversations with several of the drivers. And I wonder sometimes, I'm like, are they ever going to let me interview them again, you know, after that? But what I've learned is that motorsports do that. They bring that out in you. They open up a person. It's for some reason that connection actually makes, and I see it all the time on drag. I was watching the drag races, and there was this old man, and he was just like bawling his eyes out. You know, they had worked so hard, and they won, and it meant everything to his kid. And I feel like I see that all the time, because it brings people together, and it challenges you, and you really do get super connected to the community. So yeah, I've seen a lot of crying dads. I've seen a lot of crying sons and mothers, and I just think that's what the sport does to you.
Oh yeah, it's unreal. I always say with what racing really brings out in people. They're either going to bring out the worst in you, or they're going to bring out the best, and it's just you never know what's going to happen. And I think one of the storylines that are always not always missed, but is always kind of under just right there is the underdog stories. Because to me, it's the guy who left work at 3:00 to be there for 5 to, go out there, run 10, 15th quietly and have a good race. And, usually he's 22nd, 23rd, and he goes out and runs a 10th, and, they feel like they just won the race. Like those are great stories that I love to hear. And I'm sure you probably got lots of them covering the sport over the last few years here.
That's, so I always say some of my favorite races were run in the middle or from the back, where, like young Ashton Vinivre, who's 77E, he last year passed, I think, 18 cars.
Oh, wow.
And it was at the end of the season. And these are the kinds of surprises that we get, and we see what that does for him. And we see, it was just an amazing race. It was incredible to watch. And a lot of people, especially when G-Force does an amazing job, they're absolutely incredible, but they can't always show everything. So we have our own track cams up there that are capturing our guys, because G-Force is very often covering what's the battle is in the front. And so after the first season, we realized we better get our own cameras out there. We're like, we don't have any material. If our guys were riding in the back, we just had nothing to go on. So we learned that really quick. And so we had we've seen some of the greatest things happen in the middle of the pack, in the back of the pack, and just seeing somebody's spirit soar like that. Like I remember in season 1 when we were shooting, and Aaron Turkey really wanted to get into the feature for the, I think it was the nationals that they run in the fall, like the last national. And it was Aaron's first time in the 360 nationals. He'd been won multiple times in the crates, but this was the first time he was running against guys like Tony Stewart and things like that to get into this feature. So he didn't make it through the heat, but he was running the B main. They were transferring 2 drivers, and he drove his ass off to get that transfer spot. And he did right at the end. And to me, that was a triumph. And that's when I started to learn that the triumph isn't necessarily in the winning. The triumph is this. The triumph is when I was watching him on the track, I was seeing something happen. Like, this kid wants it so bad. I see his spirit. I see something is pushing him to the point he's going to get this. Like, you knew he was going to get it just watching him. And I see, a similar experience with Joshua Hill on getting into the transferring into the A from, because he didn't get into the time trials through the time trials on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But so he went into the B main, drove a great race, and then had an amazing 10th place finish in the feature. And you could see it in his driving. And that's what I love to see. I love to see those moments where they really want it, and you can see that they're going to get it. And then not only do they have a clean race, but they exceed their expectations, and they didn't even really know what they were. They just did something great. And that's what I love to see. That's when I get so excited, especially for our guys. I'm really, really invested in everyone, but it's these guys that I've been cheering on for 5 years for the show that, that's when I get really crazy in the stands.
I feel like it's the same as me, because for myself, I promote. This year I got like 22 drivers I promote. So I each one of them hold, even though I can't be biased, I do hold a little bit more like there's times where my hats are just rotating. They just might as well be spinning on top of my head, because when you got the people that you've invested your time in, you've got to know, you've got to learn, you've seen their heartaches, you've seen their highs, you've seen their lows. It's so cool when they've either had a low or something was amiss. And, it's like you said, it's that like Aaron Turkey getting second right at the last second to move on to the A-Main and the Nationals. Those are fantastic stories, and you got to cheer for them on. No different than me when I see, all the people I work with. I may be up at the grandstands. I may be cheering for a great race, but I'm watching you specifically because I want to see, like, if there's a great miracle out of there, I hope I see it.
Well, who doesn't love a comeback story? Who doesn't love an underdog story?
Exactly.
And, like, I think it would be boring if we were covering all drivers that always did extraordinarily well, although it'd be amazing to watch them do that and see how they do it. But you would probably also see that they aren't always like that they have their own. What I notice about these drivers is they are so hard on themselves. I don't know. I mean, I've seen musicians be very hard on themselves as well, but it's a tie, I think, with race car drivers. But I notice it's not even just in racing, it's in everything. It's just like a competitiveness or like I don't know, but it breaks my heart sometimes to see how hard they are on themselves.
Oh yeah. I've I had a friend of mine in this year almost, I think, missed like the first 3 weeks of racing. They got the car there, they ran practice. Something always happened in the features that they couldn't finish, that they couldn't run. It was like 3 weeks, or I think it was like 2 weeks, but 1 week was like a rain out. Another week, her boyfriend ran her number for her so she can score some points. Then the third week, she blew a motor in the first feature, like 6 laps in, and then she finally got out, ran a full feature, and finished 4th. Hell yeah, that's a great comeback there.
Definitely. That's my kind of thing. That's what I would want to see. That's what I'd want to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was at the NASCAR race on Wednesday there, so I was up in the grandstands and I was watching. Like, I didn't care how the NASCAR Pinty's race was going because Trey Latzovich was out front. Once Kyle Steckley got out front, I was like, you know what? That's boring. Third place, whatever. But that Hornet's Nest from 4th on back, oh my God. I was like a little kid in the candy store. I saw a Stuart Friesen slide job. I was seeing all the different battles back there. I'm like, this is the best racing right there.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Stuart Friesen is very fun to watch, though.
Oh yeah.
He really gave us a show last year when him and Trayton were at it on just before they just out of turn 4 there, just before they crossed. And that was such a great ending. I was kind of hoping it would happen again this year. They were together for a while. I thought it was going to happen, but
yeah, I was hoping for I was actually hoping for Steckley to win because I was at his first APC series win. And when he got by Trayton with like 20 laps to go there because of that spinning car, I was like, oh man, don't tell me I get 2 for 2 here. Like, I get to see his first APC win. I get to see his first Pinty's win. That's gonna be awesome. But okay. I want to get back. We're getting off track a little bit here, and that's fine. That's usually what I end up doing. So, we're gonna get back on track here. It's not only you we're talking to tonight. We have Melissa, Jim, and I hope I say this correctly, Danielle.
Yes, but she goes by Neil.
By Neil. Okay, perfect. We have a couple more people we are going to be bringing on here. We're going to learn more about them. We are going to bring Laura back later on in the show. This, like I said, guys, this is an action-packed episode. We are going to be talking so much more. So stay tuned for a couple seconds here while we bring in Melissa, Jim, and Neil. You're diving into Vision 20 Editing. New company with their services providing video editing to get your video perfect and exactly the way you guys are looking for. They also do audio mastering where they're going to take your audio and make it crisp and clear. They're bringing your vision to life. That is right. At Vision 20 Editing, we want to make sure that your vision comes to life in the way you want it. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Vision 20 Studios. Now let's get back to the True North Racing Podcast. Joining us back here on the True North Racing Podcast, we are being joined by Melissa, Jim, and Neil. girls, introduce yourselves, please.
Well, I'm Melissa Jim.
Neil, last name Annett.
So
I have an easy last name, so it's a lot easier for people to memorize.
Okay.
I hate being that kind of person. I always either mess up and I don't like doing that too much. Let's talk about your guys' role with Friday Night Thunder. What do you guys do on the show?
For sure. Yeah. Well, we're both assistant directors, but I also kind of have another role as being the GoPro director for Friday Night Thunder. So anytime you see like the in-car stuff, that's kind of like me and my team managing that. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I am also an assistant director. It's funny because this is a newer position for me, and a lot of people ask me like, oh, what do you do? What is your job? And I do such a terrible job and give myself like zero credit for like what I do. I'm like, oh, like nothing. I don't really do anything.
But really, she does a lot.
But like, so I think lately I've been trying to be like more conscious of like, what does that mean? What is it that we actually do? And I think one of the biggest things that I would say that we kind of do is like the story element as well. So we do sit down often with Laura and kind of go through what happened throughout the week, what's developing, information that we're getting, and sometimes we'll have like conversations about that and what we have on film and what we can put together as a story. And sometimes the stories just naturally happen. So it's just us being there and being like conscious of what's kind of just happening and like coming together and be like, oh my God, did you see that? Like this beautiful story is just happening and telling itself. And those are nice moments. But yeah, like I'd say a lot of like what we do kind of is like in relation to like the story aspect.
Okay.
And support and
yeah, for sure. And on the odd day, well, most of the time, like at the tracks when I'm, not helping the GoPro team out or whatever, I'm also like a camera operator.
Okay.
So yeah, we're kind of we dive into everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
fun.
for Melissa, I gotta know here because I have 3 GoPros I slap on a race car at any given time here for content that I create on my end. How many GoPros do you guys go through a year?
I knew this question was going to come up, so I was prepared. So we actually have 26 GoPros in total.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I thought I was impressive with my 3.
Yeah, we have all makes and models of GoPros too. We have like 7, 8s, 9, 10s, and then we have 3 of the GoPro Max cameras.
Yep.
Like a recent purchase as well. We experimented with one and we put one on the car, and those things are not cheap. Like if you're buying the camera itself and then the rig and everything, like they're like just under $1,000, but that's we slap it on a sprint car every Friday. But it makes very compelling, very cool footage because you can control the angles of the GoPro Max. Yeah, it's just fun.
See, that's always the cool part because like my friends have always given me crap either for reasons of my GoPro. One of my GoPros, we like to say it has a curse on it. Is it this one? It is this one. So this one was upside down on the front bumper of a vintage modified like this. When it came in back into the pits, it was like this.
Oh,
and ever since then, there's been a crack right down the middle of it. And it has been involved in 6 to 7 wrecks.
Wow.
So a lot of my friends are like, just get rid of it. And I'm like, I can't afford to throw that out right now.
Well, it works,
It works. It still works. But I gotta know, what is kind of one of the weirdest angles you use the GoPro for? Like, where's the weirdest part you put a GoPro yet?
Oh, we've tried front bumper, face outward, and we've also tried like looking at the tires, and those just usually come back caked in mud. Like it's more to just like get the splatter at that point.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of the times, people don't necessarily understand why we have, because we kind of mainly do 2 GoPros in car. So
Yep.
one's like kind of like on the driver where you see their steering wheel. And then one's kind of like on the side of the car, like facing out. So that's more of the angle I would say that drivers normally have on their cars. This is like just on the side of their chassis looking out. But yeah, we kind of do something different where it's like peeking in. And it's, I don't know, I personally like that angle a lot just because it's more intimate, it's more focused on the driver.
Yep.
And we've like,
And it's great for feedback.
and yeah, and you see a lot of action going on behind too, like behind the drivers when they're in their car. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
That's usually I like to put 2 in one car, one facing, same deal, one facing the driver back at him, and then one facing out front. Because one, I always say to those guys and gals who I put GoPros on, it's like, understand one thing, this is for you guys to get better as well. And I'm sure a lot of those teams you guys deal with, I'll use it to get better as well. Whatever they see.
Yeah, some of the drivers request the footage. Some of them actually have their own GoPros as well. So yeah, it definitely would help them for sure, just to like see how their car's handling or how they're,
Oh yeah.
So it's
sorry, go ahead.
I didn't know what I was going.
I'm so sorry.
About GoPros all night, because my team, the GoPro team, we usually have like 3 techs that manage the GoPros all night, and they're making sure like they're putting new batteries in, like wiping off the lenses after the guys come off the track, and they're just like, they work so freaking hard, and they're like their own little world when they're on set on race days.
They have their own channel on the walkies. Own world.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
They're constantly communicating. So
hey, but that's what they need to do, right?
Yeah.
I want to learn more about Neil here, because obviously behind the scenes with the storytelling is, because as much as it's, I'm gonna assume it's labeled a reality TV show. I'm gonna assume, like, you guys please tell me if I'm wrong.
Docudrama.
Docudrama.
Sorry,
okay.
docu-soap.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I got it wrong. Sorry.
So with learning about the different drivers, what has probably been one of the hardest things to do to really pull out from these drivers more about them? Like, what's been the hardest part for you to help develop these stories?
For us, me?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You asked that. I actually, what I went to school for was entirely different than film. I went to school for psychology. And so,
yeah, that's
like,
a big difference.
Yeah, so, I mean, a little different. And so I had a job kind of like in the social services field, working with kids. And when I left that job, this one kind of just happened upon me. I don't know. And it was amazing. And I'm so like grateful and thankful that it kind of just showed up for me. But it's funny because like we used to do like this thing called supervision at my old job, where we would sit there and we would like talk about like our clients, and obviously not in a bad way, but in like a way of like, okay, this is going on in our sessions, I'm having a really difficult time, or they're having a really difficult time, and does anyone have any like suggestions or recommendations? And you would just chat about some of the, I wouldn't say, yeah, kind of like behaviors, things that they like shared with you, things that they opened up with, things that they obviously are having a hard time with. And it's like so interesting because once we started to do some of these story meetings, I'm like, this doesn't feel that different. Like it's very interesting because like when you are like on the set and in this kind of show, you spend a lot of time with these people, and sometimes you have to research them too, so you have to like look into information and collect stuff on them. Sometimes you're like walking and you're like, I know who you went to prom with, like, because I had to do some research on you.
Oh my God.
So you like have this weird kind of like lens that you get to look at these people and learn so much about their lives.
Yeah.
And it's like really, it's very interesting and very like, it's really like beautiful. And there's so many stories like within kind of like all of these different people that we meet and that we're kind of around, and especially our cast as well. But yeah, it's just interesting. So I think that those conversations that we have as well really is helpful, because sometimes like Melissa might be privy to an experience that I'm not, or catch something on camera. So that communication between us is really key in sharing and kind of all collectively coming together and being like, what is it that we can do? How can we support this? Where is maybe a setting that we can do something with these people to allow them to continue to share like these stories with us? So there's a lot of like problem solving and planning involved, and just
even just like creative ideas with just like, what can we do with the Hill Bros?
How can like
You know?
or they do something that's funny, how do we like continue to support that? And so there, I think a lot of it comes back to just like our communication and like those sessions that we have, which I'd say that's my answer.
See, like right there, like those are, that's awesome, because it's so weird how you were in one field, had nothing to do with like this industry, this like with film, TV, and then you realize it's not so much different, and you're taking your same skill set you learn and have really flourished into your own, which I gotta applaud you for that, because it's, one, I guarantee you it's not that easy, and two, it's absolutely incredible to hear. And that's what I like to do with these is learn more about you guys. But sorry, oh, I had a little tickle there. But one of the huh?
Laura's giggling in the background.
One of the fun things is we like to do here on the show is we like to dive in. Obviously, you guys are not a typical guest that we usually have on. We usually have race car drivers or crew members, and we're going to see a lot more of that later on the show down the road here. We're going to go, but for me to sit here and learn more about Friday Night Thunder, this is actually since we've set up this meeting tonight to talk about it, I've been doing as much research as I can on my own, because I'm going to be honest, as I said earlier, I have no clue about it. I didn't know. I knew there was something filming, but I didn't know what it was. So to sit here and be able to get to learn this has been really exciting. And for me, I like to see what's on the screen, but for personally, I like to see the people and talk to the people that are on behind the camera, behind the scenes, who are really making this possible. Because without people like yourselves, there's a TV show, just no one's decided to do it yet. So I would like to know more about how you guys got involved with Laura and Friday Night Thunder, and when you guys started with them.
Oh man, well, I've been with the company since 2012, like with Big Soap Productions. I originally started off as like their office administrator.
Okay.
Kept slowly moving up, and just kept working with them, and got to be a part of so many productions. And like I was involved with Friday Night Thunder right from season 1 when we first got there, May in 2019. And back then I wasn't even assistant director. I was a production coordinator. So I call it like the production mom is how I would describe people. I tell them where to be, tell them where to eat, what we're eating, you know. So yeah, I originally started off as a production coordinator, and then eventually in season 3 started doing more assistant directing with Laura. And that's actually when Neil was like introduced to being part of the team. But you weren't even like an assistant director. You were like,
oh, it was a PA.
She was a production assistant. Then I think we saw that there was like, she's in the wrong position and role.
They were like, we gotta find a new one for her.
Yeah. And here she is now.
Yeah. Okay. Is it my turn?
Yes. I kind of don't.
I know. No, it's okay. It's fine.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I think like probably like a lot of people, when COVID happened, a lot of things shifted.
Yeah.
And I think I was just ready to kind of like move on with my job at that point. And I was doing a lot of like personal work, lots of yoga. And one day my sister, actually, who used to be in the film industry, it's actually funny because I went to school for psychology and I'm in film now. And my sister went to school for film and then she went into psychology and we're like, let's just
Here's
so we
my
kinda, like,
degree.
yeah, here you go. Let's just like trade. But so she actually had worked with Laura in the past and kind of just knew her from like her experiences in the industry. So one day they just like ran into each other and Laura's like, yeah, like I'm doing this show. This is what's been up. And I'm like looking for someone to help out. My sister was like, yeah, like my sister, like me, like Neil would like love to help out. And so she just kind of like passed that on and I like reached out and started as like a clearance PA. So that's kind of like collecting all the release forms essentially from the people being like, do you approve to be on camera? Which was great. And like I was like just excited to be involved in any capacity because I was really interested in film like growing up, but I just didn't ever pursue it like educationally. So I was like, oh, that's just like it's like a dream that's never gonna happen and just do what you went to school for. And so yeah, it just like landed on my lap one day and I was like, oh my God, I have to take this opportunity.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I understand where you're coming from with that because I always thought growing up I was going to be a mechanic. But after looking back on my life just recently here, my grandfather was in radio. My dad was in radio with CBC back in the my grandfather was with CBC radio in the 70s and 80s. He retired in the early 90s, I believe. My dad was with CBC radios in the 80s. I didn't really know much about broadcasting. My grandfather had his own studio, learned a lot of stuff from him, went to high school, got told to do the announcements, did the announcements, did a whole film class, never thought it, just took it as a BS class. And here I am 13 years after school and I have zero schooling on any of the stuff I'm doing, but I'm doing my best of what I can do to put videos together and lay out some audio and do some stuff for some friends and make some videos for racing because looking back on it, that's what I enjoy doing. I've always enjoyed it, just never thought it would ever happen. I always thought I was destined to be a mechanic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it.
So, with that being said, obviously, what was for Neil here again? What was the biggest learning curve for you to go into race? Like, were you a fan of racing going up, or was your first foray into racing last season when you became a part of the crew?
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up on the reserve, right? So I've always known about the track, but I'd never stepped foot on that property. Like I don't know, it just wasn't really in my like realm.
Yeah.
And so it was like interesting. Like I was like, okay, like we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. And it's funny because like you started out as a PA, so you're not really like paying too much attention because you're just like, I just gotta get these faces. Like I gotta get all these people to sign these forms for me. So you're like really focused on that.
Yeah.
But as I've like moved, kind of through and been given the opportunity to learn more and like try out new things kind of within Friday Night Thunder. Laura like extended like a lot of different opportunities, like, oh, like, do you want to try some research? And I was like, okay. And then, yeah, so it was like research, and then it was editor's assistant. Yeah. So it was just like very much like, yeah, like I just want to learn as much as I can about also this industry, like the film one. But like kind of through that, you obviously learn about racing. And so probably the funniest was like having access to like the show and watching the episodes and being like, that's what a B main is. Like, oh, it's like the last chance to make it into the final race. And it's like, only made sense to me like after watching the show because
Oh,
we're not really
man.
on the ground either. So
Yeah.
I'm just sitting like hearing like all these words like B-main, and I'm like, yeah, cool. Like I don't know what that is, but like so like that was kind of funny. And I was like, guys, I understand like what the B-main. So that was
I could just imagine you going up being all excited. I figured it out, and there was like, we
Yeah.
know.
yeah. Yeah, so it kind of was like that. But I think there was probably a learning curve for everyone, right?
Well,
Like,
especially for us going in 2019, because we were just the weirdos with the cameras, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone was like, who are these people coming on our track and why are they filming everyone? And
where are they going?
yeah, what's the show about? And I don't think it was until after season 1 aired that like people were like, oh wow, okay, like, you know, they love like, yeah, we love our cast, we love the racing community, and it's definitely a family. And
Oh,
yeah, there was a huge learning curve going into season 1 because we just didn't know anyone, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's where
yeah.
actually I was going to lead to here next is how, like, you from the very beginning, you've gone through this learning curve now, but what was your first foray into racing? Have you been to Ohsweken Speedway? Have you gone to any other tracks beforehand before going to Ohsweken to record? Or well, how did you get in? Like, obviously we know how you got involved with the show, but what was your first foray into motorsports here?
Into motorsports, I think it had to have been Friday Night Thunder. Like my dad was into horse racing growing up, so that was like my first form of racing watching as a kid. But yeah, it wasn't until Ohsweken Speedway. We went there years ago to film like an opening segment for like another show that Big Soul did with Derek Miller. It was called Guilt Free Zone. And we were just there shooting some promotional stuff on the track. And that was like my first time being there, but it was just empty, right? They were just doing track grooming at that time. But it wasn't going until like 2019, actually going there on a Friday night, seeing the pits like alive. Because when we went, it was just like empty, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was such a total different experience going into that environment and then seeing the energy of like the pits and all the cars and the sounds and watching the races and just being completely covered in dirt. It was the best part. And that's still the best part for me every Friday is like just sitting in the stands actually watching it and, you know, being completely dirty at the end of it. You're like, that was a good race day.
That's the best part is, you know, it's been a really good day at the
Yeah.
track when you go home dirty.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the pits or in the grandstands, doesn't matter. As long as you get dirty.
Yeah. But yeah, my first race was in 2019, and I remember seeing a sprint car for the first time. Because I was like, it's so funny, our base camp was like in their sound shack at Ohsweken Speedway, so it was so tiny. And I don't know, we had I'm trying to remember how big our crew was. It might have been like 10, 12 people. But I was normally just there, and I think I actually took a break to go watch a race, and it just so happened to be, I think, like a 360 race. And then seeing it in person, I was like, whoa, this is insane. Seeing them, how fast they go around the turns, and oh my God, seeing a wreck for the first time too, and especially if it involves a cast member, that's crazy. That was a moment of like, whoa. Like you start to care about them, and then like you're like, that's the last thing I want to see happen.
Absolutely. You know, we never want to see anyone get hurt, and you know, and I'm sure there's been lots of incidences where let's talk about the one as we talked with Aaron Turkey last week. We talked about the incident earlier this year where him and Glenn Stiers got hooked up in turn 3 there. What after talking to the people, to both Aaron and Glenn, and seeing the footage, was that an eye-opener for you guys at how serious these wrecks can be, or what's the worst wreck you guys have seen?
I think it was when in season 1 we kind of did an introduction of like with the concussions that Glenn was experiencing when he kind of, because in season 1 he was kind of like retired at that point, right? So it wasn't until we obtained all the, like we had like a montage of all his crashes kind of like as a while, and then watching it, that was scary. And I was just, seeing how fast these things can go. Like, it's one thing to see it in video, but when you see it in person, like, it's scary. And looking back on the GoPro footage, the impact that, like, you know, Glenn had hit Aaron with, it was just, that was probably one of the scarier wrecks, I think, being a part of it. I just remember being in the stands with Laura, and we were freaking out, and we're like, yeah, we got to get down there and see if they're okay. So
Absolutely.
We weren't supposed to be around there, but somehow we got there.
we were there that night, and of course
that didn't happen. Yeah, it's just, and that was like, you know, that was, I think, the first really scary wreck for me, I think.
Yeah.
Other than seeing the archival Glenn footage of like all his wrecks and stuff, which, and those cells are like crazy.
Oh yeah, like it's always fascinating how sprint cars act and react to the dirt, and it's always fun to watch. Like when you're watching asphalt racing, a wreck's a wreck. You know, the car gets sideways, plows into another, or he slides up the track or whatever, same kind of deal. But because of the open wheel aspect of the sprint cars, you touch wheels, you can launch a lot harder than an asphalt car could with open wheels. We saw an incident last year at Flamborough where Oscar Modified jumped the wall in turn 3 and sailed over it and actually hit somebody. And unfortunately, I knew the guy who got hit. He made it. He survived. He broke a leg, but he was able to not walk away, but he was able to recover. He's back racing this year, and when he came to our meetings last year, he had to use his crutches, and we had to watch him go up the stairs because of turn 1 at Flamborough, they have the VIP tire, so it's all stairs. And we watched him walk up there, and we're like, we saw him drive up. We're like, dude, how's your leg feeling? Like, he's like, oh, it's feeling a lot better now. It's like, we watched the video, and he's like, I launched like 20 feet. And because I know that person, the next day I was like, my heart sunk when I heard who it was. And racing is a dangerous sport. We can all agree on that now. And when we got ties to people, we know it hits a little different when they wreck. Yeah. And because you feel like they're your friend, they're a part of your life, their family. We almost have to sometimes we've come so far in the safety aspect that when big wrecks happens, I'm going to be honest, that's the first big sprint car wreck I saw this year was the one between Glenn and Aaron. And to hear them both walk away, get out, we talked, like I said, we talked to Aaron last week. He gave us the down low on it, that he was hurting for a little bit afterwards. He wanted to make sure Glenn was okay. We always got to remember there's that dangerous aspect to the sport. And it's so tough when we see, with Glenn Steyer's wrecks, they're not simple wrecks a lot of the time. They're usually unfortunately a highlight reel wreck. Yeah. And to me, it's scary how dangerous motorsports still is, but it's still fascinating because of what those cars can do.
Yeah, so, I think, we also, in one of our episodes, I'm not going to say which driver, but it's like he got into a wreck, and then the following week later, the next day, got back in it. Like that takes so much, like bravery and just like love for the sport in itself, I think.
Oh yeah.
To be able to, get back in.
I always say the best medicine to getting over a wreck is to get back in a race car as soon as possible. Yeah. Because or else you're just going to get into your head, and you never know what's going to happen when you go on track. Maybe you're going to be a little more hesitant to get in there, but if you go out there the next day, act like nothing happened, it's usually you end up be a better driver.
Yeah. And that specifically, like I actually used to be a competitive gymnast, and that was the same thing. If you fell and you were okay, we were always encouraged, like, you're scared right now, go right now. Like, go now when you feel that, but then it's not going to build, because the more time you have, it does. And yeah, I experienced that. Like, as a gymnast who you're working through a lot of fear there as well, with like a lot of different skills. So like that statement was always true for me as well. Like, if I don't get back up and do it now, it's going to take me a really long time to work through this, like, in the future. So yeah, I seen that with a lot. And so I could definitely see how that like applies to this sport. And it's interesting because, yeah, I feel like this sport specifically, with it there being like this kind of like element of like adrenaline and fear and having to work through like mindset, there are a lot of similarities, I'd say, with like the sport that I did. It's still very different, but still like, so it's interesting to like hear about it, because like I'm like trying to understand it in a way that makes sense to me. So thinking about kind of like how that panned out for me in like my sport is helpful.
Oh yeah. That's the
trying
best way to
figure
do
out
it.
where mindsets are, right, where they
Yeah.
might be. It's still a motorsport, and it's very dangerous, and I don't want to like, this like make it sound like, I don't know, but there's still a lot of aspects of it that
Well,
just, I guess, remind me of that.
oh,
So
absolutely. I have to do the same thing with my fiance. There's times where I'm explaining something in motorsports and she's like, "Can you put it in hockey terms for me?"
nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's so you can imagine how my hockey terminology has now grown more because now of having my explanation of it, because she grew up a competitive hockey player. So for her,
Nice.
she understands the competition. She understands all the stuff that racers go through. But if I'm saying something like, "Oh, this," she's like, "What does that equal in hockey?" Now I haven't had to do that in a while, but that's obviously because now she's taking the time to learn, which is always a great aspect. But you're right though. It's honestly, I love comparing different worlds to motorsports to explain different aspects of it. And for anyone to understand different things, to put it in terminologies they understand, you learn, I always say you learn another 10% more on motorsports than you did 5 minutes ago, or listening to me talk about how a specific spring has helped jacked up the right rear to get them more hooked up on the outside edge. If you can take that, put in your own terminology to figure it out what I just said, you just understood motorsports a lot better. And it's awesome to always hear.
For us, it's interesting hearing the driver's perspective of like, how the track feels or like how their car setup is. And it's like everyone kind of has a different way of describing things too. Like their own little lingo. It's like sometimes we're like, can you describe that? I don't know.
Or will you show us what you mean?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, it always brings me back. There's a comedian I saw. Oh, who was it now? I can't remember the comedian's name. I think it was Jeff Foxworthy talking about NASCAR in like the Blue Collar Comedy Tour and stuff. And he talks about how like you don't understand a damn word that man just said, but he's got a rocket ship of a car because he just said it. And it's absolutely right, because you don't understand a damn word they say half the time. I don't even understand a word. I've been in the sport for 15 years. There's still times I don't understand what the heck someone just did to their car. What'd you do? We just jacked up the right rear with some right rear pressure. We put 2 rounds in the left rear just to help loosen off that side. It's like, okay, I understand stuff, but can you slow that down just a little bit for me? So that's it's the lingo is really like, because you can hear one from one driver and the other driver can say the exact same thing and use different words, but you will not understand one compared to the other, or you think one's less significant than the other, but it's the same change.
Yeah. There's so many like different ways of describing one thing that's essentially,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's funny because we do like a lot of note taking as well, so we know what happened throughout the day, and that really helps us with the storytelling. And whenever I've have to like direct help someone new that's like taking notes, I'm like, if they're talking about their car setup and you don't understand, just say like car part broken. And if you hear like the word of whatever the car part it is, you could write that down, but you don't need it to be specific, because there's no like, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I don't know what they're saying. Sounds like it's overheating. So
it's hard. Sometimes
yeah.
we need them to like explain it a few times, or like actually like show us the part, like Neo was saying.
Or parts where you're just like, I'm just gonna accept that it sounds like it's overheating, and that's where I'll leave it.
I remember, this is kind of funny but random, when I first saw the word chassis, like being new to it, and I didn't know how to properly pronounce it. And I was like, I'm not even gonna entertain the idea of how I said it, because it's embarrassing. But I was
it like
and then someone from
chassis?
No, okay, I'll say it. It was chassis, is what it was. That's so confusing.
You know what though? That makes sense.
It's
like
when you look at how it's spelled,
yeah,
the way it spells, it's like, yeah,
because you think chassis, it would be like an IE at the end or something like that, not a IS.
Right? It's confusing.
So like that's awesome. So obviously for you guys, picking up lingo has been obviously a huge deal for you guys. What's been the one, I want to know, the one weirdest word you guys have heard a driver say that's been going on with the car that to this day you still do not understand?
I don't know, but I can feel like a confident answer, and then like in replies that we constantly get sometimes, it's just like, that's racing. You know, that's always like an ender that we get. But in terms of torsion arms or something. Yeah, like Laura's like torsion arms.
That's a good one.
That's a funny one. Yeah. What else?
Stagger is pretty self-explanatory now.
Yeah.
Stagger. We learned about ride heights.
Bicycling was one. I was like, I didn't know what that was at first, and someone, cowboy out. Yeah, next one.
In the cushion.
Okay.
That actually got explained recently, and I was like, like whoever explained it did a good job at explaining it. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, that meant nothing to me. Like, in the cushion.
For me, dirty air was a funny one that I heard.
Okay.
Like, it's literally, right? It's dirty air. Like, it's, can't see anything, right? But like, I think when I first heard it, I was like, that's kind of funny, because we're at a dirt track. It's dirty air.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't even know.
No, that's a good question. I don't know.
That I don't understand now.
Yeah. See, those are fun. Like, because like we hear dirty air and asphalt, and that's just mean you're in the pack.
Oh, see, okay.
If for dirty air, for asphalt, it just means you're in the pack, and because you need quote unquote clean air. Clean air is whoever's out front, because you're breaking that wall out front, and all the air behind them is all disturbed. So that's on. I don't know if that's different on the dirt side. If anyone's listening who is from the dirt, I do not crew for dirt. I've never done that. I'm not saying what it is, but if you guys can help us out, let us know in the comment section below. Because for asphalt, it's whoever's in the pack. If you're further back and you can't get any of that clean air, which you're breaking through, usually it hinders your motor a little bit, because it's not getting enough air, because you're not breaking it. It's the air's already being broken up, so the air is not getting to the motor to be able to give you all the horses it needs. So there's that one.
That's the thing, though. I feel like you learn almost something new every day at racing now. Yeah. Like, it feels like something new you learn pretty much every day.
And
or something you again, and it feels like the first time.
Yeah, or someone just stop explaining it and making it
Yes.
more like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's the best part though,
Yeah.
is if maybe you haven't been enthralled in the sports or been around it. I even to this day, I still make it a mission to learn something new every time I go to the racetrack. Because one, you never stop learning, which is always great. Like, you may be done school, you may have thought you'd left, but I didn't realize this until shortly after. You never stop learning. And if you continue to learn, you continue to get better, and that's what I always say.
Yeah, and it applies to, like, for us, it applies to like equipment as well. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we're constantly, like, the film industry is constantly evolving, so yeah. It's fun to learn.
Oh yeah. So again, same thing with Laura. Look, we just did it a little bit ago here. We got a little off the rails here. I want to get more back onto the Friday Night Thunder stuff.
Yes, of course.
What is some of the stuff that Laura, we'll talk about that with Laura in a little bit here. What is one storyline heading into season 3 that people can look forward to from you guys? What's one thing that you want that you think fans are excited to look at?
What do the fans want?
I think we got really personal with Derek Miller this year, where he got really, really vulnerable with us. And I feel like that'll kind of be a different side for the viewers to see, because they're so used to seeing him being like the funny guy, the musician, but like he really let down his guard, and he got, like I said, vulnerable with us, and it was just nice to see. And to
and I would say that really, that specific episode was very personal, very vulnerable, very like open, and just learning something entirely new about this person. And it kind of set like this new, almost like precedent for like some of the episodes that we're kind of working on this year, and how we want to like try to approach some of our episodes going forward. So I think that, what is that, episode 8 or something?
It's episode 8, but episode 3 and 4 is also kind of fun, because we also introduced a new character into the series, who came like pure rookie, I guess is the term that they call it, like had no form of racing prior to coming in with being at Ohsweken, and his name is Victor Bomberry. Just very charismatic, just such a fun loving guy overall. And I think seeing like, I guess, his story and how it's all new to him too, and he's kind of learning it, but like just like how fearless he is, and how he instantly became like a big fan of racing, and that'll be refreshing, I think, for people to see too.
That's
someone
awesome.
Who's new to the sport and clearly loved it.
He's really fun. He's really fun to have just around and in the presence of like our sets and stuff too, and at the track. So that like definitely comes across on film as well.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to this. I keep getting more excited, and this is just awesome. So actually, I think trying to think here now. I think it's gonna be a perfect time right now. So we're gonna pause for a couple seconds here. I'm gonna show another clip that we have here from Friday Night Thunder, and when we come back, we're gonna have Laura join us, and we're gonna do our Tailored to You Media Design fan question period. So check this out, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, you came looking for a show. Well, here you go.
Ohsweken just races like a big, fast track.
Oh, trouble in turn number 4.
We're done, Ski.
You got this, okay?
That's unbelievable.
Oh, Victor Bomberry found beyond his limits.
I don't know what the hell happened. If you can't afford to wreck it, don't race it. Yeah, what he said.
And now it's the time for the Tailored to You Media and Design fan question period. We want to thank everyone for submitting their questions. We got some really good ones for the ladies tonight, and I'm going to assume that most of these are going to be for all three of you, so hope you guys are ready for this. All of these
Is this
except
like a
for
game buzzer or something?
I'm really competitive, so they should
whoever puts their hands up first gets to answer. How about that? And I only get to see out the
Alright.
corner of my left eye here, so get ready. The first one comes to us from Rob Twitchett, and he goes, what was the biggest surprise to you when you started filming at the track?
I think that for me, the biggest surprise was how much I loved it and how much the racing really resonated with me. I wasn't expecting it to have that effect on me. And I quickly, I had been there before. I had been to Ohsweken Speedway, but I'd been there to see some Thunderstock drivers that I knew. And I remember seeing the sprint cars, but at the time I just wasn't there for that. And this time we were there for that. So, and it surprised me how much I wanted to know as well.
For me, surprise was just how close everyone was and how everyone knew everyone. That was, yeah. It was a lot of, I don't know. I just felt like we were invading on their, on their territory.
We
And
were,
like,
I guess.
yeah, and we had cameras and it just, yeah, I don't know. Surprising was how welcoming everyone was eventually, I think. And they started coming to, well, no, you know what I mean? Like coming around to like warming up to us. Not being so scared of the cameras, I think was one thing too, right? So, yeah.
You going?
The buzzer.
Yeah. So I think what surprised me again too was like just like the community that exists. I had no idea. Like I said, racing wasn't really in my realm, and I think that was like a really big surprise, kind of like learning how supportive they were with each other and how someone was willing to step in and help. I had no idea. And so that's been really like cool to see. But I guess the other thing I think too is just, yeah, like there's been a lot of topics of like mental health and I guess, I don't know, like kind of being privy to like the environment that is racing and the way that it can support mental health and the way that they kind of support each other through that as well too. So that was sort of a surprise for me as well. Like, again, coming from the field that I did and then coming in and being like, whoa, there's so many topics about mental health here. And we're like telling these stories and I had no idea. Like, yeah. So
You're like, worlds are aligning.
Yes.
Worlds are colliding.
Yeah, you're like, sprint car drivers can be anxious too.
There's a little bit of everything in there though. And
Yeah.
I think also the learning curve about was one of the things that I actually enjoyed. It actually activated me. And I learned about all forms of racing. I've been to F1s around the world now, and I've been to Indy races and NASCAR races, and I've been to the Chili Bowl, and I went to see Kyle Larson race at in Placerville in California, and we've gone over to the States in New York State a couple of times, and it's just, I think part of it was actually learning about it's never too late to get involved in racing. Even if you've never been a fan, if you've never had interest, just try it, just go, just see what you might enjoy. And for me, part of it was the learning part. I was at a time in my life where I kind of needed to learn something new, and I wanted to invest my energy into something. So that was a beautiful thing as well, the learning curve and how much people were willing to share to help you learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. Again, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more from them, so we're gonna get through all these here. The next one is, what is something racers find totally normal that you think outsiders would think is a strange? How did you word that? Hold on, I messed up here.
We
I
should
was
be
writing
holding
this.
up and be thing. We're on like Love Island or something in a challenge.
What is something that us racers find perfectly normal that you think outsiders would think is strange or unexpected?
For me, the money they spend on it.
Oh yeah.
I've been in the car for 5 minutes and I've spent $20,000. You know, like to me, I'm just like, oh my God, like now you've had a wreck, but you have to take the risk or there's no reward. So you have to, so things happen. And when you really push your limits, things happen and you spend money. And sometimes the sheer amount of money people spend blows my mind. Or maybe missing so many family things.
Yeah.
Oh, and just how like their schedule revolves around racing. So it's like, oh, we can't go to so and so's wedding because there's a race that weekend. Like that's wild.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, child of mine, I will not be at your wedding.
Yeah. I also think the amount of like work it takes to like just prep your car week to week, right? Like going like before races and then after races, and then sometimes there's like all weekend of racing. So it's just a lot of, I don't know, maintenance. That's a lot of work.
Not to mention getting in those cars and careening around the oval in the first place. I mean, that's probably the biggest one. I went into a 2-seater once and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm on ice. It was super fun though.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine what it feels like to drive it. I think I have to try one day. Would you guys try it?
Well, I mean, I would do a 2-seater, yes. But we got into the 2-seater just fooling around because one was just kicking around at base camp. And it's so tight.
Oh yeah. I was sitting in there and I was like, they're like metal seats. Like this can't feel good. Like I had like more of a full realization of like hitting a bump, and I was like, oh, like, I don't even like.
It's rough in there. And
Yeah.
if you're claustrophobic, it's not the place for you.
Oh yeah.
I thought I was gonna get stuck. I was like, I'm worried. I was sitting like claustrophobic. I was like, how am I getting out of this freaking thing?
Neil, is there anything you would like to add to that question before we go on to our next one here?
I guess just like, even though, you know, Melissa mentioned that, yes, they do miss a lot of like functions, maybe kind of like maybe with extended family or something. But I think the other thing that I guess surprised me in a way too is like actually how much time though, if you do have crew that's family, like how much time you actually do end up spending with those people.
Yeah.
And how like probably, I don't know, like because not all families are like that, right? Like not all families spend that much time together and have to learn to communicate and work through those like challenging moments. And they're kind of in a situation where if they're not communicating well, it's not necessarily going to work out well. So it's, you know, it's like a very interesting kind of dynamic that goes on there that maybe isn't necessarily like conducive to like other places in life where you're kind of forced to like work on those things and spend all that time with your family or crew, like as well. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the next one, again, same thing from Twitch. He goes, after visiting other tracks during the pandemic, has your view on how Ohsweken operates changed now that you have something to measure it against?
Well, I mean, I kind of wish all those other tracks that are struggling had the resources they need for certain upgrades. And I know it's really, really hard. That's what I learned, is that it's a struggle for everyone. It's not easy out there to keep these tracks running. And, you know, they need the cars to come, and they need a good car count, and they need the people to come. And it's heartbreaking when you don't see enough of the people coming. And that's actually something that I get concerned about. It's like, what's the future of racing? You see how they struggle. Like when you're at Ohsweken, you're not going to miss some of the top-notch first-class facilities that they have there. It's obvious, you know, and all the paving is obvious, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful facility. The others are too. They're all beautiful in their own right. They all have something really special about them. And we learned that they all have unique characteristics that make them their own thing. And that's really, so they all, I mean, it's hard to compare because they're all so different. But I would love to see the other ones, you know, get what they need to be able to, you know, not have to struggle the way that a lot of them do.
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything to add to that. That was pretty good. Because they are all different and unique in their own way.
Oh yeah.
Like I like how Brighton has that like creek going through it.
Yeah.
I hear about people actually going in there sometimes, but I never saw it. But
Yeah. I've honestly only been to Merrittville.
Oh, yes.
That's the only other place I went. And that was like fun because I was like, okay, this is like an entirely different experience. And that's kind of how I went into it, being like, this is going to be fun. It's going to be different. And like, I love a good like food truck. And don't they have food trucks there?
well, they got
the
They have
pizza
that-
place, they got the smokehouse, they got the big scoop, and trust me, I go there as much as I can when I go down to the Niagara area.
Going anywhere, and when there's food involved and they have something like that, I'm always like a fan of that. So I'm like, yeah, man, like,
Yeah, and each track is different because sometimes they'll have like bus races, which are like, that's funny. Like, I want to go see that. Or monster trucks. Yeah, that'd be so fun.
I would love to do a bus race.
Pardon?
I would love to do a bus race just once. Just
we're gonna go see the pig. We're gonna go see the pigs race when we go to the New York State Fair next week.
The what?
So
the pigs race?
Yeah, there's
a
actual
pigs race.
Pigs that race.
and they do hurdles. They like jump.
And they have little slots.
Okay, hold up.
And they got names. Like, it's a whole thing. It's like it's if horse racing was formed in pig. Like, it's
okay. First of all, I need this like emailed to me, like where this is, because I'm gonna make a point of it to go next year. My fiance loves pigs, and I guarantee you it would go buck wild if she saw that. So I need information on that. Because the only pig races I ever saw was like little ones at like I used to go to the Paris Fair over in Brant County, and they had like, it was duck races and pig races. So it was just like a small little oval and then like up the hill, down the hill into a water jug, and that was it. So like to hear how like that, I'm like, oh, now I need to see that to see what that's all about, because that sounds like that sounds interesting to me.
I'm excited.
That's how we felt about it when we heard about it.
we thought it would be hilarious if we went down there with our cameras and our Friday Night Thunder outfits on, and she's putting GoPros on all the pigs, and we're like, we're here to cover the pig.
Do it. I would love to see that view. That'd be hysterical. I would love that. Oh, we need something like that needs to happen. I'm sorry.
I think we're on to a new show here.
It's like that. We're still working on the pitch.
Yeah, that's the next show.
Babe's Revenge.
Yeah. Somebody will buy it.
Oh man. On to our next question here. He goes, what Friday Night Thunder racer is your favorite? What one is the funniest? And which one gets the most angry or emotional?
Oh wow. That's kind of unfair to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I love them all for their own reasons. They're all amazing. And you know, I gotta give props to the ones who are openly vulnerable. Like, it's really hard to be that way.
Yeah.
But they've really opened up and shared with us, and that's a beautiful thing. Who's the funny? I mean, they're all funny in their own way too. Like, Brian is hysterical, and Joshua's always got the zingers, and Matt's got his things that he does,
and Johnny's like dry humor.
He hates carrots, but he eats them anyway. It's like, you know, like there's just isms about people, you know.
And there's res humor too, which a lot of, I think, you know, that's in itself, it's its own thing. But everyone's pretty funny in their own unique way.
And then which one gets the most angry or emotional?
Well, Alex Hill can get very, very angry.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like, okay, so I did some like, I had to go and watch the episodes and be like, when did they swear and when do we need to bleep it, right? Like, where's the bleeping? And I did Hillbros, and I'm like, okay, bleep, 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 here, bleep, 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 another one, bleep. And then I get to Alex's episode, and I'm like, not gonna have any swearing in there. And then it was like, and I was like, okay, I'll like, some F-bombs in there.
Oh yeah, she doesn't hold back, which is great.
I would not want to be on Alex's bad side. Really would not. I can see why she plays with the big boys down in the States. Like, she is a really, really freaking tough girl. I mean, she's been through a lot, and she's been very open about her mental health journey, but she doesn't hold back. And I love and respect that about her so much.
That's awesome. Like, oh man. What is the hardest part about filming at a busy racetrack?
Hardest part?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we always stress to new crew members is safety, that the vehicles have the right of way, that get out of their way, stay out of other people's pits. Like, if we're shooting in Johnny's pit, stay in Johnny's pit. Don't get into everyone on the other side. They're working on their cars, you know, so those have been like really, really important things, especially when it's really busy with a lot of cars and they're crammed in. So that has been one of the biggest challenges, is just staying out of everyone's way and being respectful. And clearing everyone.
Yeah, I was just gonna say clearances, which is like a whole other world on our show. Just like, you know, clearing logos on cars and some billboard signs and that.
Gatorades.
There's certain brands that, you know, didn't give permission, and
I don't think John Deere gave us permission.
No.
I don't think Gatorade did they?
No, they didn't.
So take your label. You see our cameras, take your labels off your Gatorade.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And off your John Deere tractor. Big giant duct tape.
And unfortunately with sprint cars, there's like, sometimes there's logos everywhere on a car, right? So
yeah.
But we also have to clear every single person who walks by. So if I have a great shot of Aaron Turkey lined up and a bunch of his fans randomly walk by, and we can see their faces and we really want to use the shot, if we can't get their permission, we can't use it, or we have to blur them. So that, I don't know, we've cleared over 2,000 logos or something.
More than that, probably
2,000 or something. And I don't know how many people, like thousands and thousands and thousands.
Wow.
And we're a low budget crew, so it's like, it's tough.
And we appreciate everyone who has ever signed a release form for us.
Yeah.
And we know we ask like 5 million times too of the same people sometimes. They're like, I've signed it already. Get out my face.
We're sorry.
But there's been very few that have just not wanted to. Like, there's, most people are pretty open to it too, which has been great.
Yes, thank you everyone.
I think what came to mind for me when you asked the question was just that there's so much going on and it's happening fast, and if you're not familiar with the race world, like there's definitely like a learning curve with like, where are we in the night, keeping track of things. And so like one thing that can be challenging is like you're multitasking. So you're like in the pits and you have a walkie and you're like listening to that, and then you're also doing an interview and you have headphones on and you got to like listen to what they're saying and respond. But then you're also like standing in the pit and you're like, don't die, like stand somewhere where you're not going to get hit. And like there's just like a lot of like things going on and sounds, and it in some ways, like if you're not able to like be like in a calm place, it can get overstimulating. But again, I think we have like a great crew and we share ways that we kind of can work better, more efficiently, and just keep on top of things. And we have like a little group chat too. Yeah. So there's just a lot of like communicating, I think, that's involved. And I think we've worked out some really good systems sort of around the way that things are run at the track, and knowing that we're not going to change the environment, we're going to be immersed in it, and we have to adapt.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is audio, because there's so many noises, right? So we've got audio mixers there, and there's always a challenge. Like I don't know what's worse, the big giant 4-wheeler ATV things, those big giant ones, those things are so loud. But the other one that's so bad is the jack.
Yes.
The way it drags along,
Yeah.
and we'll be in the middle of the greatest interview. It's like, and someone's just like dragging. And it's, of course, we know that this is part of the environment. We know this is what it is. Of course, it's going to happen. But we're just like, that jack is like the worst sound. But also, we've learned how to deal with Bob, because Bob, of course, but it's like, we know it's going to be 3 announcements. It's like, sprint cars, line up, you got 5 minutes, sprint cars, line up, sprint cars, line up,
let's go.
Come on, let's go, you got 5 minutes. And then we all wait, sprint cars, let's go.
Hey.
So we know it's going to be like three pauses now. So learning these things is kind of cool too.
We got Bob at Flamborough as well. Yeah. So we know exactly how he is. We were sitting in the grandstands half the time. We can hear Bob across the track. We're like, just Bob, come on, man.
I love Bob. He makes my day when I see him at
Me too.
Yeah.
And our last question comes to us from William_Trillium on Instagram. And he goes, what has been the coolest part of making the show?
Oh my God, I have to think about this.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Okay. I think one thing that we've kind of chatted about is just being 3 female like leads, creatives on the team. And just feeling like the kind of like empowerment of that, like leaning into a sport that has been traditionally known as like male dominant as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And coming at it from like our perspective and the way that we see things. And one thing that I thought was like really freaking cool about that was like the stories that we were telling. And so that was something that like when I came on to the show, I learned a lot about, and I think it was really cool just to see the way that like Laura, like maybe something really dramatic happens, but the way that we're telling that story might be a little bit different than, I don't know, maybe if you didn't have 3 females kind of in this sort of position and making those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been like really cool to be like, yeah, like we're telling like this story from like this perspective. And it's like a really beautiful thing, because I'm not necessarily sure, like I said, someone else would tell that same story and focus on the things that we're choosing to focus on. So for me, that's been like unreal to kind of like work in this team.
Yeah.
With these other 2 strong ladies.
I mean, I'm not going to add to that because it's the same. But I think for me, the coolest part has just been like seeing the completed product of the show. I think it's like once it's all edited together and you have like the mixed audio and the color correction and, you know, your opening sequences in place. And then, I don't know, it's just seeing your name in the credits too. You're just like, wow, this is really cool. And also just like, you know, seeing something that I filmed, or, you know, being in a shot of the show, and then it's just really cool. Yeah, I like that. It's like seeing, it's being there in that interview in that moment with that person, and then seeing it in you know, that it made the edited, you know, episode. It's just really cool.
Yeah, and you like did something to help make it come to life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
Yeah, all of that for sure. But for me, I think it's, I mean, I have friends and family there now that I never, ever thought I would have. And the watching the kids grow up, like we've watched children be born. We've watched, you know, people come up from karts, and they're in generations of racers. And so to see the generational aspect of it, but also we are literally watching kids grow up. We've been watching people move up classes. So to see that progression and to see people really dedicating themselves, but to also just see these little kids growing up and how like they're just some of the most amazing children, like Shale and Jaislyn and Travis and Tucker, and like these kids were like born in the time we were shooting this show. Well, not Jaislyn or Shale.
But Aaron was not a father when we met him in season 1.
Yeah.
So to follow the life journeys and to see these families and these generations, it's really beautiful. And last or in season 3, actually, where we spent some time with the Turner family, amazing racing family. And it's really nice to be able to include some of their generational story as well, so all of those family parts of it. And I think because I don't have a really tight-knit family and didn't really grow up with a lot of family around me, it's really, really, really nice to be around, and I get to just experience it by osmosis. So that for me has been the coolest part.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for answering those questions for us. That was our Tailored to You Media and Design fan question period. If you guys are ever looking for anything that Taylor does, you guys can check her out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. This one's a little bit faded now because of going through the wash, but I've had this cup for probably about 1.5 years now. She's designed our logos. She's made some awesome ones. I can't show the other one because we do not have permission from them to use. I'm trying to get permission to use it on air because I love the cup. It's a Dr. Pepper one, and it has our Joe Media logo plus the True North Racing Podcast logo at the bottom. I love it. I love using it. So if anyone's ever looking for any tumblers like that, please reach out to her. She does a great job. She does great work. Find her at Tailored to You Media Design on Facebook and Instagram. I don't want to let you guys go anytime soon because I love having this conversation. You guys have been amazing guests. But Neil over here kind of touched on my next topic, and it's something that you're absolutely right, Neil, is that you have 3 women who are leading a show in a predominantly male dominated sport. I don't know where to go with that because usually this is where Megan would have helped me out. Because because let's be real here, in this day and age, it's weirder for me to ask these kind of questions, because sometimes it can come across as, I don't know how to word it here. It doesn't come across as the way I want it to. It could come across a lot worse. So if I say anything out of line, please, I'm not trying to mean it out of line. I'm not trying to say that here. But for 3 women like yourselves leading a show like this, I got to know, how awesome is that? That's the first question I got to know before we get into anything serious here.
Yeah, I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. And like what Neil was saying about, how our perspective and the types of stories we tell, there have been moments where we've witnessed and filmed, some pretty bad arguments, fights, accusations. It's not without it's things, like these things are going to happen. People get really heated. It is an emotional freaking sport, and it's going to happen. And the way we see it is that's all that it is. It's emotion in the moment. It's not something we need to dwell on. There's another story here. And I think that's where we're coming from, is like this deeper, trying to have a deeper understanding of the people that we're working with and sticking cameras in their faces. Like, we have to respect who they are. And it's not like we're out here saying, we got to make a bunch of money and we have to put out like the most salacious material we can find. Like, that would never, ever be our goal. And I think there's a lot of heart in this sport, and a soul, and love, and passion. And, all of us, it's not a mistake that none of us had a lot of previous experience with racing. It was never marketed to us.
Yeah.
We weren't seen as the audience. We weren't provided the opportunity to make up our minds ourselves whether or not we wanted to be involved. We were just kind of like isolated by the marketing, and fair enough. If that's what was working, that's what was working. But being in it now and telling these stories, I'm like, well, geez, like, how can this be relevant to somebody who would have been me back then, who didn't feel like I was included, who didn't feel like I was part of the audience, or nobody really cared that I was part of the audience? But I think all that's changing, to be honest. I think racing is being marketed to everybody now, and it has been for a while. But when I was younger, no, definitely not. And I'm not saying it was an intentional thing to keep us out. It's not like that at all. It just wasn't where the market was.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that our show can be digestible by anyone, like we're in it to see people and how they experience this world and who they are and what makes them tick and what kind of people they are and what makes them happy or sad or mad when they get out of the car or that sort of thing. And we're starting to discover all those little things about people. And that's a pretty cool thing. But I think we come from it from that perspective.
Yeah. I think going off of like what Laura said there a little bit earlier too, is just like, we do witness a lot of emotion and sometimes like maybe conflicts or people not seeing eye to eye. But to us, it's like, that's maybe part of the story, but it's not the whole story. That's just maybe what we see on the surface. And there's so much more digging that we do to tell a deeper story than just, someone's emotional or someone, acted out of turn or said something. Like it's more to it. There's more to the story than that. And there's more to these people than that. So it's really, I think that's what's really cool is that we can all kind of collectively come together and see that there's just so much more of a story to tell than just focusing on these like surface things that happens. There's always a bigger story.
Like there's one conflict in season 3 that we kind of couldn't get away from. It was a big story and it was a challenge for us whether or not to include it. And you'll see, I don't want to spoil it, but it was a difficult decision for us. Like we kind of had a community vote among ourselves to whether or not we were going to include it. Because we always say we're not that kind of show. It's like, did you guys film this fight? No, we didn't. We're not that kind of show, So yeah, that's one thing. That's one situation where I feel like we used material but I think we used it very well and we used it tastefully and we told the story without showing too much. And that's a delicate thing to do.
Or like taking, like we went into it as neutral as possible.
Yeah.
Like, and we try to come from this understanding of like, people are going to make mistakes. And just because someone may have, again, like acted out in a way or said something, that doesn't define who they are. Like these people that we work with, they're not one dimensional. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. They do amazing sometimes. They're very, there's just so much to them.
Yeah.
So like, I think, just telling the story of like, these people are not one dimensional and there's a lot more to them and what we're trying to put across.
That's all. You're absolutely right. Like that's like, when stuff like that comes up, you have to really figure out where you guys want to take it. And, I applaud you guys for, you're right. There's stuff that's on the surface that is actually down below. And it's definitely hard you got to walk a fine line when dealing with that. Right. And from what I've seen is that you guys, I like I said, I've been excited to watch this for some time now, and I'm more. And again, you guys keep hyping me up. So like, I'm gonna be sitting down. I'm gonna have a fresh bag of popcorn. But obviously going into it, it's tough because you have sometimes, as you said earlier, Neil, you have sometimes that stories that develop naturally, and you guys follow them. And then I'm not saying you guys write the story and then kind of follow it, but you guys learn the behaviors, I guess you could say, of the people of your cast, and are able to really bring it out in them. And of course, when stuff happens and people's like, oh, did you get that? Sometimes, yeah, it's not the most optimal. What's the word I'm looking for here? I don't even remember. I'm blanking on that word now. It's not the best outlook sometimes, and you guys kind of want to stick to what you guys have been doing. And I think that's actually great to hear that you guys kind of had a community vote. You voted on it, didn't show too much, showed enough, but not too much. And I like hearing that. Obviously, this is why I needed Megan here tonight, because this is not a question I feel like I should be asking. No, let's be real here. A guy asking these questions, it seems weird, okay? I'm sorry. But for women involved in motorsports, it's definitely had a different outlook in the past 20 years. I remember hearing about these powder puff races where the women would take their husbands' cars out for on the track and drive. You never really heard of women racing in motorsports, but now you have Alex Hill, you got Jillian Hills, you got I gotta go Asphalt here because I know a lot of them over there. You got Amanda Balson, you got Megan Mitchell, Caitlin Wallace, Tina Ronning, I hope that I'm saying that correctly. Jesse Howard, Cassie Howard, Miss Penny. You got all these names out here of women who are racing in motorsports, and it's becoming more, I'm not saying socially acceptable, because it's been acceptable for a long time, but it's being more available to women to get behind the wheels now of these machines to go racing. I gotta know if you guys are seeing that also on the backside, on the dirt side as well, because I'm not primitive to a lot of dirt stuff, whereas you guys obviously have been enthralled in it. But maybe I don't know how to word it here. Like, this is why I need Megan tonight.
Well, we are seeing more women on the dirt.
Yes. Thank you for saving me here.
They're spread out, but there's only a few around.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we lost Noelle Teal last year to an accident, and that was very, very tragic. And a tremendous loss. Wonderful, wonderful person. Her sister is now racing in a crate.
Yep.
Tiana. And her father, Chris, is still very, very, very involved, and it's really great to see them at the track. And there's a couple of girls coming up and of course there's Melissa Miller in the Thunderstocks. There's others, and I'm like not thinking of everyone's names now, but there are some that we know of, but definitely not a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely not a lot. But I do feel like it could grow. And I actually feel like we could be part of that. I'm hoping. We're watching some young girls come up in the micro sprints, and that's really nice to see. Shakira Miracle is driving. Her sister isn't driving anymore. But yeah, not a whole lot. Just a few around.
Yeah.
And I want to you though, like, I feel like we actually had we spoke with Jessica Friesen this week, and she kind of chatted with us about her career and just also being a parent and a mom. And I think that it's not just the racing world that we have to consider, it's also the outside world and the roles that we take and the level of time that moms and in their roles and how they, like, the level of time that they spend with the kids. And I don't want to downplay like the men, but like there is this thing in society where women, that becomes their identity, whereas the male may be able to maintain all of these other identities. When you become a mom, it's very difficult to be seen as anything else. And so I think that plays a big part too in whether or not women are in the sport or can maintain the sport, because the roles that still exist today in society very much contribute to whether or not it's realistic to be involved in a sport like this that does take so much time and dedication. And I think that's another factor.
Well, look at Jessica gave up sprint car racing after she had her child,
and Friesen was able to continue, right? And I don't so just like the roles that we take in society as well.
And it's nice seeing her after a few years she's been able to get back into sprint cars or into modifieds, because she's been racing modified, I think the last year or so, maybe last year and a half, which obviously has been great to see, because again, it's you're right though. Like when when women have children, the role becomes parent. Race car driver gets put to the side. And of course, men can just continue on. Doesn't matter what time of year it is, they can just continue. But it's obviously it's nice being able to see women out on track, being able to watch them race, winning races, because it's always phenomenal. Like last year, 2021, we saw 2 females win both features in a pure stock race up at Flamborough. Afterwards, they both got head-to-head shots down at the flag stand. They were both ecstatic for each other. It was like that. Like, to me, like that's a great night in itself.
Yeah. We didn't even mention Holly Porter.
Oh yeah, Holly Porter. Yeah.
She came to my mind like right away.
I know.
I didn't want to shout out a bunch of names.
I was sitting here, I'm like,
so
no, she's awesome.
Yeah.
is that all right?
Yeah. I need pizza.
These are what women need.
Corn chip.
So as I'm looking up over at the time here, it's about 11:45 at night. Of course, we could probably continue this conversation on for another 2 or 3 hours and still not run out of topics to talk about. But I feel like maybe we're getting to a point now. Maybe we're gonna wrap this up here. So before we go, I want each of you to not give us a sneak peek. Maybe give us an episode number you think fans would love to watch for the upcoming season.
Well, whatever you pick, I'll pick a different one. I'll be like a couple that we're all thinking.
I'm gonna pick 8 only because you guys already talked about it and I wasn't in the room for that. But what I love also about that episode is that Derek Miller, yes, he shares a story with us, but it's also a testament to us, like, fostering trust, because I don't think it took a long time for him to share that story on camera. I've known him for 20 years. It took me 4 years and I was like, I know that it had to be done a certain way or he wouldn't have done it. It was very, very painful for him. And another reason why I think it'll be relevant to a lot of people is that, it's another racer we lost that we're talking about, who we don't really talk about much anymore because he passed away 30 years ago. But he was an up and coming motocross racer from Six Nations. And it's a really, really tough story because apparently he was like one of the best. And his mother, who still lives at Six Nations, appears in the show. And she actually took up motocross after her son passed away. And she was catching air and everything on that bike. And what was she? I don't even know how old she was, but she just wanted to stay connected to the community. So it's a multi-generational historic story really for Six Nations and for a wonderful racer who I think would have been legendary had he had his time. And he's somebody that we should remember. And that's the thing, is that this show is not just about looking forward and talking about who's racing now. We want to remember some people here, and that's very, very important to memorialize people who were an important part of any sport or anything. So yeah, I like the crossover of that episode into another motorsport.
For me, are we giving episode numbers? For me, it's episode 10, because it was the first time NASCAR on dirt came to Ohsweken Speedway, and that in itself was like a pretty cool event to film. I think people will like that because I think you'll have both the asphalt people who are fans of NASCAR, right, and then the dirt track community. I think both communities, could really appreciate that episode.
Yeah. I think for me it's episode 6. And so there's I guess because we do dive in a little bit to the sport of lacrosse, and just from being from Six Nations, like that's just such a big sport and other community that kind of exists on Six Nations. And I was lucky enough to kind of be surrounded by that kind of environment, attended a lot of games. And so there's this really healing element to lacrosse, and it's known as a medicine game. And so like just kind of touching on that subject is just really beautiful, and you learn a lot about the Six Nations community and the sport and why it means so much to us, and why it's something that we do want to share more about, and I guess provide more information to people that maybe don't know kind of like these things about lacrosse.
Yeah, and I think the two characters that were involved in that episode also give a sense of like community as well.
Yeah.
And giving back just feels good, you know. So yeah. When you watch the episode, you'll know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I've stated numerous times in our conversation tonight, you guys have hyped me up so much. I'm excited to watch season 3 of Friday Night Thunder on APTN starting September 8th at 8:30 p.m. Did I do that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Good job.
Yes. I've been memorizing that stuff like no tomorrow. It has been an absolute pleasure having you three on tonight. I would like to extend a invite back. Was gonna call it quits for the off season after October, maybe end of November, but maybe after all 13 episodes air, I would like to do a recap with you guys. If you guys are willing to, I'd love to have you back on for a season recap, and we could talk about the season, what all of us thought of the season. If you guys are up for it, I'd be willing to have you guys back and do an off-season interview with the three of you guys again.
Yeah, only if we do it like we'll have to have a charcuterie here, and we could do like a game, like skill testing questions for the audience and stuff, to make sure they actually watched it.
Yeah,
so we'll be asking them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or
We
they
can do
can-
little
we can-
games.
Have like a true false game or something like that.
Yeah.
No, it sounds really fun. This was really fun tonight. I think the hardest part is going to be not confusing season 4 with season 3, because we're going to be like in that really like putting together the episodes and being like, wait, when did that happen?
Don't worry. Aaron Turkey was talking about season 3, and the entire time he was like, "Oh yeah, I can't wait for you guys to watch season 4." And I'm like, "That's probably gonna be about a year from now." So.
It takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for talking about Friday Night Thunder. I've had such a pleasure learning more about you and how you came out, how Friday Night Thunder started, how you all joined. Again, I'm excited for September 8th now. There's no question about it. Before we head out, usually again, I have drivers on, so this is the time where I usually let them have about 12 minutes to let everyone know where they can find them on or to let them give a shout out to their sponsors. If you guys would like to, you guys are more than welcome to right now drop your socials if you guys would like, and so where people can find you guys, and of course where they can find Friday Night Thunder on social media as well.
Sure. So our website is FridayNightThunderTV.com. And for social media, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you can search Friday Night Thunder, or our username is @FNThunderTV.
You remembered that.
I have.
Yeah, she's been on it. Yeah.
And just in terms of like personal usernames, I am MelJim10 on Instagram.
Oh my god.
Laura is the Milliken. Neely, was it Neely?
88.
88. Yeah.
All right.
And website will always link to our social media accounts too, so anyone can find us that way.
Awesome. Well, ladies, once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you guys have a great rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thanks
You
for
too.
having us. It was so much fun.
Bye now. And we're back from our conversation with Laura, Melissa, and Neil from APTN's Friday Night Thunder. I got to thank them for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that because that was so much fun. I had a great time having them on the show. I got to learn so much more about them. And I feel like I barely scratched the surface. So I'm hoping maybe when we bring them back on, we can talk more and learn more about them because it's great work for what they're doing to talk about the indigenous drivers at Ohsweken Speedway. But I'm not going to talk too much longer tonight, guys. I think we've done enough talking for everyone. But make sure you guys check out an all new season of Friday Night Thunder on APTN this Saturday or this September 8th at 8:30 p.m. I know I will be watching. Maybe I might host a watch party. I don't know yet. But if you guys are able to, please check it out. It is a nationwide channel. It is, I believe it's already on whatever package you have. I think it's a standard channel. So if you guys can tune in, please tune in. Like I said, I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. Please take a look at it. But other than that, guys, make sure you guys follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and as well as you guys can check out all our information over at joemedia.ca. Other than that, make sure you guys stay up to date there, everything going on. Maybe I'm going to drop some hints on some future things that are happening. But for right now, guys, that's it for me tonight. Make sure you guys check us out and check out our next interview this Thursday with Aaron Turkey. We'll see you guys later. Bye now.
The car zooming by, True North Racing. Let's go.